And what we have here is the Bay Trail tablet with 2 gigs of RAM and 64 gigs of memory. And this is an artificial unboxing since I got this a few days ago, but I don't think anyone will mind. So here we have the regular outside box that it came mailed in. And inside we have this molded cast wood, paper container. Actually, it looks quite nice and feels quite nice as well. And it's completely recyclable. And so slide off this band, retaining band, and the lid just lifts right off. And here we have the tablet. And here you can even see they have a little inset of bamboo. So kudos to whoever at Dell came up with this. It looks really nice. Makes you feel like you got what you paid for. And the tablet itself, so I'll lift it out, and on the back it'll show you how to lift off the back panel by pressing at certain points on the lid. And also we have Microsoft Office and the key for Touch Edition, Microsoft Office 2013. We have the user manual, which will never again see the light of day. We have a USB cord about 3 feet in length, and it's pretty hefty. It feels like it could carry about 2 amps of current. And finally we have the dog head, what they call it, power adapter, 24 watts I believe. And has USB on the top, and on the bottom you can actually pull it apart, and here you can see it's actually grounded. So presumably in other countries what they do is they'll actually just replace this little part at the end. And when it's plugged in, there's just a little white LED light at the top. And here you can see the bottom of the case. So let me begin by, as I said, this is something I've opened previously, so I just turned it on. And again, this actually works out better if you just slide it off sideways. So now I'm going to go over what the ports are on this. If you look at the bottom, you see we have 2 slots for the support for the keyboard, some pogo pins, and a dock connector. But what's interesting is these sides are actually magnetic. So I'm not sure anyone still uses floppies, but if you do, it's something to keep in mind. And around the side we have a mini HDMI port, the SD card slot, and some odd hole. It's about the size of the paperclip, but it's blind and it doesn't go anywhere, so I have no idea what that is. We have 1 speaker here. On the top we have the power button, a small white light that comes on, 2 holes of unknown purpose, probably microphones. Going around, we have the audio jack, a volume up and down switch, another speaker, and the charging port, which is actually a micro USB, which is again very good, and a super speed USB 3.0 port. And I will say I've tested this port and tried to plug in a small dongle I have, but unfortunately it does not actually conduct any data. So sorry to shoot down any hopes there. So while I'm at it, I'll demonstrate how you eject the SD card on this model. You take a pin, you stick it in the hole, you press, and it actually ejects with some force, and you just can kind of get it a little loose, and you can get your finger behind it and pull. And out comes the SD card. And here I have a SanDisk 64GB Ultra model loaded. You can see it's almost like a SIM card in a phone. You pop it in, it latches into the little notch right there, and then you can slot the carrier into the slot. And I'll demonstrate the display quality once I can calibrate the video camera. Just a moment. And everyone's probably keen on seeing how exactly the back comes off, so I'll demonstrate that now. There's a small notch here that you can kind of fit your thumb under, and very gingerly lift up. And this is only the second time I've done this, so I'm going to be very careful. It's held in with small latches around the side. So this isn't exactly something you want to do every day. This is too nice of a device to be doing that. So, your fingernail under, lift up, gently pull, and here we go. The back cover can be removed. It's held in with some clips. So here you can see it's a 32 watt-hour battery, that side up. There's two latches holding it in place and a standard ZIF connector. And here you can see the NFC antenna, and presumably that's some internals like the mini PCIe slot somebody found. And here you can see the 8 megapixel camera. So, and to put the back on, you first line up the tabs at the top. It slides in vertically, and you can push down at those points that they referenced in the plastic to pop the back on. So I'd say there's about 12 of them scattered throughout the body of the tablet. So there we go, and the back's back on. And it has a nice texture to it. I guess the best thing I could say is like a rubberized pen almost. Smooth but not grippy. And not too much of a fingerprint magnet. It's tolerable. The front, on the other hand, is almost like an iPad glass. You're going to get fingerprints all over this thing, but thanks to the high quality display, you're not going to see them very much. And in a moment I'll bring out some other tablets to compare it to. So here I have the Venue 11 Pro along with the Venue 8 Pro, an Iconia W3, and an iPad Retina Mini. And I'll try to compare them in the appropriate categories. So between the Dell Venue 11, which is a 16:9 screen format, we have the Dell Venue 8. And the screens are approximately the same quality, they have the same nice feel to them. There's a capacitive button on the 11, which is actually extremely sensitive and you'll bump it a lot by accident. Whereas the Venue 8 has a button on the side that you can press. Actually, that's the power button. And like you just noticed, it's kind of easy to get these two confused. This is the Windows button, that's the power button. And in terms of screen brightness, viewing angles, and clarity, they're both fairly good in comparison to something I'll demonstrate later. So, and then here you have the Venue 11 Pro, and as you can see, it's just a much bigger screen. And you can even feel that in the heft of the device. The Venue 8 Pro feels almost like a magazine, cheap magazine you'd pick up somewhere at a stall somewhere. This feels like you could whack somebody with it and do some damage. It's still pretty light for what it is, but I'd say it's about the heft of an iPad 1. And I'd compare it to, let's say, the Iconia W3, which the viewing angles on the screen are pretty abysmal. It can cause eye strain if you use it for too long. But another thing you'll notice is how thin and light the Venue 8 is compared to the Iconia W3. I mean, this feels like a brick, like you throw it through somebody's window and hit them. This feels pretty light. I'd say comparing the Venue 8 Pro and the iPad Mini Retina, they're almost about the same weight. But the iPad definitely does feel a lot slimmer due to the textured backing on the 8. But while I have large hands, so I can one-hand the iPad Mini, but I know people who can't. And the Venue 8 Pro is just probably a lot more convenient to hold. Your thumb can actually reach almost all the way across. Whereas on the iPad, it's pretty much you're playing Game Boy style. And comparing the viewing angles on the Venue 8 Pro and the iPad, I'd say it's about a tie. The iPad Retina Mini is brighter at steeper angles, but at those angles, I'm not sure you'd be looking at it. And between the iPad and the Venue 11 Pro, I'd say just due to the massive screen size you have here. It's just, there's no comparison. It's a lot easier to work on this. And just to demonstrate the screen size, here I've just brought up some utilities. I've set display scaling to 125%. It comes stock from the factory at 150. It's just a lot easier to use it like this when you're accessing files. And touchscreen sensitivity is okay. I have no complaints. It does support an SD card, so here you can see the partitioning layouts. It's got a 500 megabyte EFI, 40 megabyte OEM, a 2 gigabyte recovery, a 50 gig Windows drive, and another 5 gig recovery after. So there's only about 30 gigs or so free when you get it. And you can see my SD card. I've done some shenanigans to get multiple partitions. I actually have a bootable SD card with an EFI partition, and if there's interest, I'll teach you guys how to do that. But it does support an SD card, and you can potentially offload some apps onto it if you know what you're doing. And just to demonstrate hardware specs, this is the Atom Z3770, 2 gigs RAM, 32-bit Windows, but it's a 64-bit processor. It even says that right here. And that's just the base specs of this device. I was actually surprised this didn't ship with 64-bit Windows given the processor. So, and let's just demonstrate. Yep, so you can see it's just a lot more real estate to work with. And the Venue 8 Pro, you can see it's also quite easy to use, a lot more convenient, but typing on it can be a little bit difficult at times. But due to its weight, it actually works out. The Iconia, having used this for extended period of time, this actually works. It's very functional. And unlike the Dell Venue 8, which charges through the same port that is for data, the Iconia W3 actually has a separate USB port and a separate charging port. And the hardware Windows button is actually far superior. I find myself using this quite a lot. And if we actually look at the Dell Venue 8's memory card slot, it's actually buried behind one of these rippable flaps, and this just really rubs me the wrong way. I feel like this is going to fall off. It eventually will, probably. But as I said, the Dell, I pointed out that this uses here we go, has a micro USB next to a full speed. If you actually plug in, like this is a wireless keyboard dongle, if I plug this in, it actually will not activate. So unfortunately, no, they didn't. This can't do data and charge. However, on the Venue 8 Pro, it can do data and charge. So as I plug this in, yep, you can see here it's detected. So it would have been nice if they added that to this, where even that small port could have been used. But honestly, with the full-size port, what's the point? You just take your full adapter, stick it in, and off you go. And just to compare the relative thicknesses of the devices, you can see the Iconia W3 is actually fairly thick. It feels almost double the thickness of the Venue 8 Pro. The iPad Mini Retina obviously takes the cake. It is the slimmest of all three of the devices, and it's extremely light too, just due to the fact it's not textured. And between the Venue 8 and the other devices, actually, it's almost as thick as the Iconia now that I look at it, but it doesn't feel that way when you're actually holding it, just due to how smooth it is on the back. The Iconia has a bulge that you really feel. So, between all these tablets, after using them for a while, obviously, I think this is a toy, not really relevant. Between these two, honestly, these are an excellent value for what they are. A lot of people bash the screen, but honestly, you can live with it. It's not that bad. It's bad, but not terrible. And the other issue is the processing speed. I haven't done any intensive apps, mainly VPN, software configuration, things like that. So this works for me. I could throw this in a bag and not have to worry about it. It feels durable. Only issue is if you're flexing the screen, you can see there's distortions popping up. Doesn't inspire confidence. The Dell, it's rigid. None of that. It's extremely well built. Same with the Venue 11 Pro. There's a little creaking to the removable back, but very acceptable given what it means. And again, the iPad is a toy. No replaceable battery, and the SIM card slot's built in, so you can't really... You can change the SIM, but you're dependent on carriers.